Hi guys, Ed Barton, the Social Anxiety Coach again here. And in this video, I want to talk about how you can network when you're an entrepreneur with social anxiety. A lot of the guys I coach go to networking events, but they find these kind of things extremely painful. They are able to go through the motions, but it's at an extreme cost to them internally. So in this video, I want to talk about how you can actually make networking events successful and much easier on yourself so you're not burning out in this way. But before we dive into any of that, if you are an entrepreneur, a professional, or a business owner who's struggling with social anxiety, who feels that it's limiting their business, who is missing out on events and networking possibilities, or other areas that could serve your business because of your anxiety, then by all means click the link in the description below this video and jump on a call with me, and we can discuss a roadmap for 2025 to get you out of your social anxiety and get your business to the next level. What I want to share with you today is something I call the PDA framework. And the PDA stands for pre, during, and after. You can apply this to networking events, but you can also apply it to almost any other situation that you're going into with social anxiety. So the P part of the framework is prior or pre-event. And this is all about your mental framing, because the mental framing side of overcoming social anxiety is so important. This plays a huge role. So your mindset going into the event is going to be extremely important. The first point I want to teach you here is the concept of mind blanking or thought cutting. And this is something we were encouraged to do in our Zen practice in Japan when I was training as a monk there. But it applies to many, many other everyday situations as well. And our tendency when we have social anxiety is to build up all kinds of anticipatory anxiety and to also do a lot of catastrophizing. So prior to a networking event, you may well involuntarily start summoning up all kinds of images of how glamorous and intimidating the venue might be, how perfect the other people are who are attending, how handsome and beautiful, and how much further ahead of you they are in business. This is often what our mind does when we have social anxiety. It doesn't just apply to networking events. You may have caught yourself doing this before going to a drinks party or a birthday gathering or any other kind of social event. I did it myself, and I used to imagine that everybody there would look like Hollywood celebrities and they'd all be so socially fluent and comfortable and glamorous. And then when I got there, I was quite shocked that these events were just full of normal, flawed human beings just like myself. So the first key step in this framework is to stop yourself from catastrophizing, and you do this by mind blanking or thought cutting. So as soon as these fantastical images start coming up in your head of how badly it's going to go or how intimidating the venue is going to be, you just cut that. You just say nope, and you start blanking your mind. Nope, I'm not going to get into it. You can even have this right as you're walking up the steps to the venue. You just keep cutting. Nope. I'm not going to plan what I'm going to do when I walk in. I'm not going to imagine the first thing that I'm going to say. I'm not going to imagine the layout of the room. I'm going to cut those thoughts, stay completely open and receptive, be present, and just play things as they unfold. And this is a little bit like you will see in sports. Amazing soccer players like Diego Maradona, NBA stars in basketball, whatever sport you see, when they are not sticking to preconceived ideas, when they are fully open and in the flow, that is when they're playing best. And this also applies for our best experiences socially when we're in a kind of social flow. So try to cut the preconceived ideas, cut the scripting, cut the catastrophizing, and just stay open and receptive to the present moment and play it as it comes. The second part of this P pillar of the framework is to treat it or frame it as an experiment. Frame the networking event in your mind as an experiment. So you're going in there, and this takes a lot of the personalization out of it. It takes a lot of pressure off you, and you can maintain some kind of objectivity. You can think, I'm just going to go there and see how many people I can speak to. I'm going to see how many different professions I can find, or what interesting backstories I can pick out from the people I meet there. So it puts the emphasis on other people, it makes it more experimental and fun, and it gives you this level of objectivity, and it takes that kind of heaviness and that seriousness out of it. And it also encourages you then to use your attentional awareness and focus that outwards, and also to ask questions of other people as opposed to being stuck in your head. You can start with a very curious and experimental mindset to ask the other person where they're from, how long their business has been going, what challenges they face, that kind of stuff. So you're gathering data and intelligence as a scientist, as opposed to going in there with someone who has a lot of tension and fear and all the focus is on yourself and your issues. You're casting that outwards. You're going there with an experimental mindset to find out stuff about other people. The third part of the pre-event mental framing is to set yourself micro goals. It can be very overwhelming if you tell yourself, I have to go there for the entirety of this 2-hour networking event and I have to speak to everyone, stay to the very end. Our mind is often very contrarian and counterintuitive. So if you set yourself a micro goal, you're more than likely going to exceed that. If you want to go running and you say, I've got to run for an hour, that's a very overwhelming, overbearing kind of goal to set, and you may not ever get your running shoes on. If you tell yourself, I'm just going to go for a 5-minute jog and take it from there, the chances are very high that you're going to exceed that micro goal and build up positive momentum and keep going from there. So I would recommend setting micro goals in your head, saying, I'm only going to show my face there just so I can say that I went to this event, just to break the ice, because this is the first one I'm going to. I'm just going to talk to one person and then I'm going to get out of there. If you set yourself small, manageable goals like this, kind of micro goals, there's much more chance that you're going to have that first interaction as planned, and then that's actually going to be more enjoyable than you're anticipating. That will give you some positive momentum, and you can stay on longer than the 5 minutes, 10 minutes that you said you were going to. You might end up staying longer than you even imagined you would. But I would highly recommend setting yourself non-overwhelming, manageable micro goals, and this will have the counterintuitive effect of actually helping you go further than you were originally planning to. The second pillar of this PDA framework is during. So these are things that you're going to do actually when you're in the midst of the networking event to ensure that you feel more comfortable and that the thing goes more smoothly for you. My first recommendation is to break the ice quickly. And this was something that I picked up for myself when I used to go to diplomatic networking functions when I worked at the embassy in Beijing. There would often be luncheons or drinks where groups of diplomats would get together and share their findings and share information together. And what I found really helped me was I would always speak first, put myself forward, ask a question, something to break the ice, to loosen the jaw muscles, because what can happen is if you go to a networking event and you just hang around the periphery, hanging on the edges and not getting involved, it can build up a lot of anticipatory anxiety, and it's as if this burden gets heavier and heavier as time goes on, and it can be harder and harder to get involved. And you may even have experienced this in a smaller setting where there might be a small group of people talking and you haven't contributed, and the longer you don't get into the conversation, the harder it can feel to actually get in and impose your presence there. So I would highly recommend, once you get to the networking event, proactively go right up to people, just introduce yourself right away. You don't need to hang around hesitantly on the edge. Just get involved, break the ice, and it's like ripping off that Band-Aid. It just makes it much easier to get it done quickly and in one go. And then once you've broken the ice, you've loosened your jaw muscles and made the first introduction, it's much easier to go on from there. My second tip for during the event is when you're introducing yourself, try to introduce yourself on an exhale. When you inhale, that triggers the sympathetic nervous system and your heart rate actually starts to speed up. And when this happens, it's a very natural instinct to kind of brace ourselves and anticipate something when we're feeling fearful. We suck in the air, but then all of our energy is up here and our voice can come out very thin and frail and feeble and a bit high pitched. And you might introduce yourself and say, "Hi, I'm Ed." And that immediately starts a negative feedback loop for yourself because you hear your voice sounding broken and high pitched. And then it makes you feel conscious that you're coming across as an anxious person. And we often feel a lot of anxiety, about our symptoms. So where possible, try to exhale and introduce yourself as you exhale or as you have exhaled, so that the voice becomes more sonorous and more in the diaphragm and deeper, and you just say, "Hi, I'm Ed, nice to meet you," as opposed to, "Hi, I'm Ed," and as you're speaking, you're sucking in air. So I hope you can hear the difference there. And this is a good rule of thumb for any relaxation work you do around your anxiety. The exhale triggers your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your brake pedal, and puts you into a more rest and digest mode. And that's exactly what we want. The third point is that while you're in the midst of a networking event, try to pay attention to your breathing and make sure that you're breathing abdominally. It's very easy for us in tense situations for our energy to start moving up and us to start holding muscular tension in our rib cages, in our sternum, in our upper arms, in our shoulders and necks. And this is what creates that familiar feeling of being very hot and tense and very tired. This becomes extremely tiring if you're holding tension in your muscles. So try to breathe abdominally, and again, this is going to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system. There are nerve spindles in your sternum area which respond when the diaphragm is being used for breathing, as opposed to this clavicular upper chest breathing, which sends a signal upwards that you're in a fearful situation. This is triggering fight or flight response, because this is how we breathe when we're drowning or we're in big trouble or being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. When we're breathing down here, this is when we're lying on our backs, relaxed and comfortable like a baby, and this triggers the parasympathetic nervous response. So make use of that. Abdominal breathing is absolutely key, and that will help keep you in a more grounded, relaxed state while you're in the event. The fourth and final point is something which I touched on just a moment ago, and that is to do with the muscular tension that we hold in our body. It's very easy when you're at a networking event for this tension to involuntarily and subconsciously creep up. So we start finding ourselves holding unnatural postures, tensing our chest, tensing our shoulders, maybe even bringing the shoulders up to the ears a little bit, clutching a drink very tightly up to the chest in a kind of self-defensive posture with a white-knuckled grip. So here we want to use conscious awareness just to notice wherever we're holding that tension, to relax, because as I said, this is where we drain so much energy by grabbing onto things. And if you've done any martial arts like BJJ, you will know that grabbing onto an opponent and holding them with an iron grip is one of the fastest ways to drain your energy. This holding of muscular tension drains energy out of the mitochondria very, very quickly. So try to do yourself a big favor and just relax yourself by using your awareness in the moment as you're moving through the networking event. And this is just all about consciousness and conscious attention, because these things happen involuntarily. So what I found worked for me was I would just often shrug my shoulders, or I would give my neck a little crick from side to side, because I would often hold a lot of tension in my neck. And this could creep up and give me tension headaches, leaving me feeling very fatigued in these events. So you can just crick your neck, relax your shoulders, open your chest, just do a little stretch here and there, wherever that may be for you, just to relax. And there's nothing unusual about that. People often feel a bit tight if they've been playing sports or whatever. It's fine to just loosen up a little bit. So do whatever you need to just relax. It might even be a discreet exhale if you can feel you're holding a lot of tension around the solar plexus. So just use your awareness to do yourself that big favor and just unknot yourself while you're in these networking events. So now we move on to the A pillar of this PDA framework, and this is the after section. And it can be very easy for us, if we've got social anxiety, to leave an event and then start ruminating, or to do a post-mortem. We start micro-analyzing every little thing we did, every interaction. We start cringing and curling our toes at all the things we think we said and did wrong. And this is really not helpful. It's often a factor to do with cognitive distortions, where we focus too much on the negative. Things are rarely as bad as we will have perceived them to be. So try to just skip the post-mortem. You've been to the event, that's excellent. Focus on the positive, focus on the fact that you were brave enough to go, and do not focus on the fact that you dropped an hors d'oeuvre at the table and somebody might have seen it. It's just not a big deal. Or you gave someone a slightly awkward handshake as you left, or something like that. That does not matter. The main thing is you went, You can build on that as you go to more events. You will get better and better. You can practice these skills and polish them. So just focus on the positive, skip the post-mortem and the rumination. And if you do find yourself sitting around on the sofa, biting your nails and replaying cringeworthy events in your head where you think you did badly, try to just cut that. And one way you can do that can even be going and do something physically strenuous. Go for a run, go for a sauna, go for something that's going to put you into your body and get you out of these repetitive thought loops, because it's totally maladaptive. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't help you. So just try to cut that out altogether by distracting yourself with something physical, and go and flush out that stagnant negative energy, as I say, with a swim, a sauna, a run, go into the gym, something like that. Because sitting around on the sofa, biting your nails, thinking about how everybody at the event was laughing at you because you did one little thing wrong is not helpful. The final point in this after section is what I often see is that people will make good connections at events they go to, but then they will talk themselves out of following up, or they will find a way to frame it negatively in their heads. They will think, oh, that person didn't really like me. They were only giving me their contact details out of sympathy or pity. And if I ask people, did they follow up with the connections they made at these events? Often they don't. And that is just a real shame and a real waste. And this is the negative voice of social anxiety tricking you out of opportunity and tricking you out of enjoying life yet again. So if you get business cards, if you get contacts, if you get leads, be proactive, bite the bullet, follow up with them, assume familiarity and assume that you have created a good rapport. Just fire off a message, fire off an email, because one thing that will really serve you as you go forward with social anxiety is this concept of just assuming familiarity. Too often we stand back, we don't go in for the handshake, we don't go in for the hug, we don't go in for the follow-up, because we assume people don't like us, and that creates an unnecessary distance, and people just wonder why we're staying aloof from them and hanging back. Assume familiarity, assume good rapport, and follow up with the leads that you've created at that event. Okay guys, so that's the PDA framework. I hope it was useful for you. Please implement it straight after seeing this. Don't hold back, go to your next networking event, and please hit me up in the comments to let me know how that went.